Good evening, and welcome once again to the Whiskey Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Fu. My other host, Chudata 2020. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
All right, and we're back after a few weeks off here. If you have been minding the feed, you noticed last week's episode was rather short and didn't have a whole lot of content to it. But 8 minutes and 46 seconds were very meaningful. We've had a few weeks to reflect on this, and we're going to talk about it.
This has certainly been an interesting couple weeks in life and reality, both as, parents and as human beings, and literally watching history unfold right in front of us. And we made a decision that our platform and our capabilities were better used elsewhere rather than this podcast, as we supported efforts that we believe in.
Exactly. And it was just, for me, it was just way too soon to say anything on it because I couldn't really wrap my head around it. And much like our whiskey tonight, it's been rationed out, and now we can kind of, we can speak on it.
Well, before we get too deep into it, why don't we go ahead and... What are we drinking tonight?
We are drinking little airplane bottles of Glenlivet 12. I actually didn't bring up anything on the whiskey, because
it is a single malt Scotch whiskey. And pretty much if you've ever said you like Scotch or you like whiskey, you've had Glenlivet.
That's very true.
It's smooth, and you definitely notice a change as it gets older, and can appreciate it significantly more. Like many things with age. Not me, though. I've gotten fatter with age.
Oh, let's not even talk about that. I hopped on the scale the other day, and I know it's not a big number to you, but...
Yeah, I married your sister-in-law, and gained quite a bit of weight.
Something about this family. Mm-hmm. They feed you well. They fatten you up.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the sacrifice.
Go to Glenlivet.
All right.
So you had recently written a blog post.
Well, let's first, for the purposes of actually capturing where we are and what we're doing. Today's date is...
June 20th, 2020.
Over the last several weeks, we have seen a significant change in society. People have reached their breaking points, and we've started to see what that means. With the unfortunate death of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matters community, as well as the larger society overall, have finally reached a breaking point and have gone to the streets to make themselves heard. At the same time that all of this has happened, we have seen continued spikes of the COVID-19 pandemic across the U.S. On the flip side, this past week we've also heard some historic decisions made by the Supreme Court. DACA, the Dreamers program, has been basically granted to continue. It found that Trump's attempt to dismantle it early was not legal. Additionally, LGBTQ received a ruling that basically...
Uh-oh, I lost your audio. Pardon this impromptu break. We had a slight technical issue with Chudata's mic. Decided to completely uninstall itself from the system mid-podcast. So I apologize for the change in his audio quality, but as they say, the show must go on, and we'll roll through it. And back to the show.
Fuck it. We're going to go off of the web camera.
Okay. Where were we?
We were just talking about the last couple weeks, what we've seen. We got into the final thoughts I had were talking about the historic decisions with
LGBT,
DACA
the LGBT, right.
BTQ plus support and wins for equal rights from the Supreme Court regarding just workplace rights, things like that, which is absolutely huge.
Yeah, and that's a big win, especially right now during Pride Month.
So, you mentioned earlier that I've started a post about all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And when push comes to shove, basically it comes down to this. We are inherently lucky in the fact that, based on our generic look and skin color, we are not considered threats. We are not considered second-class citizens in a lot of ways that other people are. But we, through our lives, have been exposed to those situations. You know, my family has a history, as do most people of the most Jewish people, that they lost several members of their family and their family trees due to the Holocaust. And some of that bigotry still continues today. We've seen people fighting for GLBTQ rights for decades at this point, and their voices are finally getting heard. But the game is changing. Society is becoming more complex, but they are also making progress. But you look at the Black Lives Matters group, you look at African Americans here in the United States, and they are quite literally marching for the same things that they were 100 years ago. And that, at this point, I believe, is the voice that needs the most attention, the voice that needs the most support, because as allies, as people of, that are just good-natured, it is our job to try to create the environment where these where people can live on equal footing, regardless of religion, skin color, sexual orientation or identification, or any other ethnicities, nationalities, lifestyles that might be prohibitive depending on who's in charge.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, and like you said, we've been making a ton of progress. There's a lot about this most recent situation that feels a whole lot different than Eric Gardner a few years ago, and the one I was exposed to early on was the Rodney King riots. That was really when I first started seeing activism of this kind of scale, positive and negative, with the riots and whatnot. And I don't know, you still see, I don't even want to gloss over it, you still see shitty people out there and shitty mindsets, and you wonder how does this still happen? How have we not woken up? And that was one of the hardest things. Again, I'm a white man. I've had my privilege. There was an incident, because I do have a pretty good tan, where I was pulled over for driving while Mexican, and it completely blew my mind, because I'd never experienced systemic racism, and it was just silly. I'm driving down Reseda Boulevard on my way home from work. I was a security guard. I took my polyester shirt off, so I'm just driving with a white t-shirt on, minding my own business, and a car goes blowing past me, and Cop's right behind him, and then he slows down, looks in my window, and then backs up, pulls in behind me, and hits the lights. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna roll with this. I don't know what the heck's going on. Pull over. It doesn't pull me over on receipt. It makes me pull into a side street. And I've been pulled over plenty of times. I have a lead foot. I've gotten 2 tickets in one day. It's, this is not a foreign concept to me.
That's a special kind of talent.
Right. So I know the process. It's typically they walk up and say, do you know how fast you were going, or did you see the red light that you ran through, or, that old lady almost got hit by you when you turned right and almost ran her over. Right? They let you they give you a chance to self-implicate.
Right.
But there was none of that. You came over, you immediately told me to get out of the car, to which I, again, completely foreign concept to me. I asked him, what did I do wrong? And he says, you don't ask the questions, get out of the car. Okay, well, again, okay, I'll get out of the car. He immediately starts lifting up my shirt, and, which is why I'm like, what the hell is going on? Sees one of my tattoos and starts questioning, what does that mean? I go, it's a tattoo. It's a yin and yang symbol. Okay, what gang are you in? I'm like, what are you talking about? You hadn't even asked me for my ID. So we finally get to that point of it, and he goes back to his car, starts running my information. Yes, he had already asked me for my name at that point. I gave it to him, and he says, it's Nathan. And he starts yelling over his door. He says, why are you lying to me? So, what are you talking about? I said, well, why are you lying to me? You told me your name was Nathan. I said, well, it's because it's my name. And he says, well, I'm looking at your file here, and it says it's Rudolfo. What the fuck are you talking about, Rudolfo? I said, that's not my name. You're looking at my record. What's going on? And he says, well, I'm looking at the screen, and it says Rudolfo. So why are you lying to me? I said, are you looking at my middle name? It's Randolph. A very white German name. It's my father's name. And he looks at the screen again, literally throws my ID back at me, hops in his car, and says, the reason I pulled you over is your fender's messed up, and he goes speeding off. Like, wow. He was fishing for a reason to pull me over because I have a good tan. And that was, it was eye-opening to think that would happen, because, again, that had never happened to me. I was like, wow, this is what they were talking about. And then I started thinking about it. This is what continually happens on a daily basis, where you're profiled and you're pulled over just because you color your skin. You hear the phrase driving while black or driving while Mexican, driving through a neighborhood. My wife works in Burbank, and she hears from the moms out there all the time. It's like, we saw one of those black people walking down the street. They don't belong in this neighborhood. And I was like, what do you mean they don't belong in this neighborhood? And how are we still here?
One of the examples that has come up over the last couple of weeks is there was a photo taken of the 2020 Harvard Law class cohort, specifically the African Americans, and they all gathered together to celebrate their upcoming graduation, and they were plain clothed. They were just literally hanging out and all trying to get into a group shot while social distancing. And the first major response you see is, looks like a bunch of hooligans about to cause trouble. Like, I'm sorry, what? This is Harvard Law.
Right.
These are people above and beyond who are, know more about anything that I could possibly imagine. And your response is hooligans?
Based on, by the way, based on what? Yeah.
Yeah, just based on the look. And this is the response of a pretty significant CEO member, or CEO of a public company, commenting this on LinkedIn. Not Twitter, not Twitch, not Facebook, LinkedIn, which is supposed to be a business focused and, your professional demeanor.
Right.
Which you don't see anymore. Like, a lot of what's happened, I think, and unfortunately I do have to say, thanks Trump, thanks conservatives for that, because they've pushed people into a corner that different minorities, different oppressed and limited groups now are standing up and fighting back. And they're fighting back in ways that are gaining attention. I think the biggest problem we have collectively as a nation is A, how do we not get bored with the movements? Because, hell, we got bored with COVID-19, and that's why we're starting to see spikes in states that were supposed to have been clear.
Right.
But,
you know. The other issue is a unified message.
Right.
We've gone past Black Lives Matter, and we've started attaching all these other movements to it, and it's diluting the cause, because that louder negative attention is just, I don't know, it's washing out the message.
Well, and I think another recent thing has come up, not as large as some of these other movements, but large in the gaming space. Last night, several prominent female streamers came out and all kind of blew the lid off of sexual harassment incidents that they had had with another major streamer. And the question came down to, what is harassment? This guy tried to deflect a lot of the criticism and put the blame on the victims. The victims, in turn, get the question, why don't you step up? Why didn't you do anything before? And I think collectively, the conversation, the people involved with it, our society, hasn't really matured to a level.
No.
That they can actually understand the cause and consequences of your actions, or what they may be, or how they may be perceived by someone else. I can remember when I was younger, I had a way different mindset about how things were and what should be entitled, as a guy who was, the nice guy, and what was involved there. And I never went to a point where I, did anything malicious, but things that could be perceived as innocent, or I thought were innocent, are easily things that were unwanted. And as I've grown older, and as I've been exposed to family and friends and life and things like that, I can look back at that and say, damn, that was highly inappropriate, and now I would punch 20-year-old Chudata for even, starting something like that. And so if I apply that kind of across the board, at what point does the situation mature enough that this is a conversation we can have collectively as mutual individuals, and not, try to write it off as high school drama, or try to bury our heads in the sand collectively.
Sure. And that was something I wanted to touch on. Is how we got to where we are now, that this is still an issue. And this is no way an excuse, and this is no way minimalizing. This is coming from someone that was literally shut off to another side of society because of my privilege, and just didn't know any better. We were raised in a generation of toxic masculinity, and where the whites had the power. And everything that we've been fed growing up has been spun to that effect. And since the 1960s, since the original civil rights movement, we've made great strides to try to level that playing field. But even that was turned around and sold back as a negative to us. Right? You remember affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was great. That gave minorities opportunities that they couldn't have.
Yeah.
Right?
And I remember my high school guidance counselor throwing a hissy fit that affirmative action was preventing her from meeting her quotas, and allowing the kids at our private college prep school, giving them more of a challenge because they were limiting the amount of spots available.
Right, but you know how that was sold back to me? That was sold back as, well, guess what, Whitey? Your job's going to go to someone else, literally based on the color of their skin, because we have to tick a box.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, every bit of positive that was supposed to come out of that movement got spun back to me as a negative. And I can imagine this has happened all across areas where, that color line is starting to get blurred, and Whitey wants to get his power back.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to wear his Confederate flag like a fucking throwback jersey that he's proud of his team, and it's like, no, that's bullshit, man.
But it's easier to blame someone else than to take responsibility for your own actions and your own decisions.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, we see it right now, and the internet society has done a great job of calling it out. The Karens, I think the Todds is the name that's being applied to the male Karens.
I thought it was Chad or Kyle.
Chad was the jock.
Okay.
The macho jock guy who, boys don't cry. But I know growing up, you knew to avoid certain neighborhoods for the only reason that what ethnicity lived there. And it's taken quite a bit. And I'm in entertainment. I'm in the creative industry. And even with that, that's accelerated my exposure in ways that I never would have possibly imagined. My uncle is a huge activist and proponent for GLBTQ rights. And still, there were stigmas and barriers and education that was put in place that took a lot of unlearning to get to where I am now.
Right.
As I said earlier, 20-year-old me and 35-year-old me are very different individuals. And I can't change what 20-year-old me did. But as 35-year-old me, I know what I want to fight for.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's why it's called systemic. It's not blatant racism. We still have a ton of that. But there's a lot of systems in place that still hold back people in minority positions. That's blacks, that's, people of color, that's, any minority, women, right? They're running the same race as me with ankle weights on, and it's just not right.
And so we talk about what are some of the changes that could be done. We just looking at it from an educational standpoint, there's so many barriers to equal education just in elementary school. We're in a pandemic right now, so suddenly the entire school system is going to be turned on its head come August. Split classes, remote requirements, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people may not even have access to computers or reliable internet or anything like that to be able to get to class in the first place.
Right.
I remember growing up, the attendance awards. We get perfect attendance and we could show up every day. Well, what happens if you can't afford to get that doctor's note? What happens if the sole breadwinner is unable to provide what's necessary? Those are things that just don't factor in to a
what happens if you can't get bussed into your school now because your local school was overcrowded and they shipped you out 2 hours? Again,
and so I think at a very basic level, it's first changing education. And we live in Los Angeles. We're hippy-dippy compared to a lot of the United States. But even our history is changed to glorify things that are white supremacist, white power, or white rightness. Juneteenth was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
The liberation and the final liberation of slaves in Texas. Yet that's not something that's a national holiday. Columbus Day, a genocidal maniac, is a celebrated national holiday.
Right, Thanksgiving, the mass genocide and stealing of land.
Exactly. We don't know about the Tulsa massacre. The Seneca City, basically, in Central Park, New York, is not something that's taught actively.
But we got Martin Luther King Jr. Day off as a bank holiday. Wasn't that enough?
Right, but even MLK's story has been whitewashed.
Exactly.
He's been used as a, baton to beat people down with.
But again, I'll say we have Black History Month. Isn't that enough?
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are half-assed.
These are things that happen.
Yeah, but these are half-assed attempts to make ourselves feel better. Right? Well, we did this for you. We have reparations. Like, again, this is just trying to justify our own bullshit sense of, we did what's right. But we're still taking we're keeping the power. We're not giving you anything else, but we feel better.
Well, think about all the bullshit going on right now with statues and memorials. Confederate statues and memorials. And the argument I keep hearing is you're erasing history. But what people don't seem to realize who make that argument is none of these statues were put up as response to the Civil War.
Right.
95% of them, I believe, was the statistic, give or take, plus or minus 3%.
Were put up in the 70s or later.
50s and 60s, starting to deal with, ways to counter the Civil Rights Movement.
Mm-hmm.
They had nothing to do with that. They were attempts to remind black people of their place according to the people who put them together.
Yep.
And yet now they're trying to be shown as heroes. My favorite quote going around right now is my emo phase lasted longer than the Confederacy. There's no actual Confederate legacy. There's no general, like my great-great-great-grandfather's livelihood was wrapped up in the Confederacy. No, it lasted less than 5 years. Nickelback has been playing to empty arenas for longer than that.
You're off the show. I'm sorry, dude. I'm recruiting new co-hosts. Anyone in chat? Anyone?
Bueller? No, I think you're stuck with me.
Damn it. Okay, you get to keep your job. Yeah. That's the one that I've been fighting with a lot of my white friends. Is, they're erasing our history. I challenge you to show me the statue of Adolf Hitler that's currently standing in a public square in Germany so that everyone in Germany can remember and appreciate their history. Right? I'll wait. And you won't find it. But we can do that here because, pisses me off.
Well, it's the picking and choosing attitude, and this goes even more so than just history or worldview. You're seeing this happening in science, in religion, in politics, and you're getting a blatant group, a group that has authority, that is just trying to shift truth, or has been consistently shifting truth, quote unquote, to tell their story the way they want it told.
Sure, because the history is written by the victors, right?
Right.
And make no mistake that this racism issue is not a U.S. thing, and it's not just a black thing. This is a worldwide thing. We just see it here the most with that demographic.
Well, it's not even here the most. We see it the most here because we're here.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Us here, we see it most in that particular dynamic, is the white-black dynamic. But yeah, it's everywhere.
I remember when Trump first came to power, and the very blatant permission to be racist.
Oh wait, with his political, campaign statement of "Make America Great Again." What
things like that?
Again?
His attack on Middle Eastern things like that. At the time, my wife worked at a religious day school, and the fact that she would get, her school would get consistent bomb threats and death threats and things posted against it just for existing.
Right.
And They talk about the Jewish people being the canary in the coal mine for a lot of things, but, it's always passive. People are able to write it off. And yet, in the last 4 years, we have seen more blatant use of attacks on Jews, on GLBTQ, on African Americans, on Muslims, on any other group that is outside of some bastardized interpretation of evangelicalism
Right, the old
and
WASP
white supremacy.
profile, right? A white
Hmm.
Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
But even that, what's being spewed isn't even evangelicalism. It has been so twisted and converted into a mindset that denounces everything that religion is supposed to stand for. I've seen so many posts recently that, don't forget, our Lord and Savior died. He was a person of color, and was killed by someone representing the law.
Right,
Tell me where it says that take care of the poor, but make sure that they have a green card.
right.
It's help your fellow man. And yet that seems to be something that is so antagonistically wrong to some people.
Oh, well, because being a decent human being means you're weak.
Hmm.
Again, this
But
toxic
what
masculinity.
is the mindset that went into building that thought in the first place? Where as a society, as a people, as a, humanity, did we go wrong with that? Following the basic tenets of every major religion out there, be kind to thy neighbor, etc., suddenly became the epitome of weakness.
I don't know, man. Like, I don't have that answer.
If we did, we'd be doing a lot more than this podcast.
Right? And again, it's like, we get that "Make America Great Again" slogan. At what point, if you weren't a white male, was America great?
Mm-hmm.
That you wanted to be that again? Answer me that.
Well, and it's again this story. I don't know about you, but every time I saw a PSA from the 50s, everyone's all happy and cheerful. It's kind of tongue in cheek done in games like Fallout,
Mm-hmm.
but it's true. There is a degree of brainwashing and blazing over the hard times so that you get this nostalgia reference to remember something as a lot greater than it was. Disney makes bank on the Disneyana, the nostalgia elements of Disneyland, every year because people remember a time when it was great, quote unquote. Nothing's changed. The rides are falling apart because of age, and they're being updated and changed and trying to attract a different audience. But, going back to that very first image is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It's that first connection, and people will cling to that. They don't cling to the idea that, someone else suffered. They cling to the idea of they were doing well or they had a good time.
It's not
Because
even
it is
getting to the
inherently
cringiness that the
difficult.
Song of the South was.
Yeah. It is inherently difficult for the human psyche to put energy behind worrying about matters other than themselves and their immediate circle. And that's a very basic psychological premise in behavioral science. You take care of your immediate needs first, and once those immediate needs are met,
Yeah, Maslow's theory, hierarchy of needs.
yeah,
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And once those immediate needs are met, you can kind of go from there. But we've kind of used that as the excuse for so many different things. Here in the suburbs are always talking about those problems going on in the city because it doesn't affect them directly.
Right.
They just live in fear of what it might mean if it moves out to them. That's the entire purpose of the suburbs in the first place, was white flight. We're kind of all over the place here, because there's so much to try and cover and take care of this, but we can the only justice we could do for this is giving it a voice, giving it a conversation to be heard.
Well, and to wake up every day and be a decent human being, is that so fucking hard to ask, right?
All right.
Yes, there's nothing I can do to change my past and that I did when I was 16, 17, 18, 20. Right? Like you said, you'd punch 20-year-old self. And there's a lot of people waking up today that could look back and say, I would punch my 5 years ago self.
Mm-hmm.
But then they don't do anything about that behavior.
Well, that's the thing. The next article I'm actually in the middle of writing right now that's up on my screen is your social media outrage is useless unless it leads to action. And that action could be educating yourself. That action could be using your platform and your voice to promote or educate others. That platform could be, that action could be quietly in the background working to change things or support others and give them front and center. That action could be just a simple human being that stands up when they see a confrontation and doesn't turn away. But yelling to the clouds, damn, this will never work, and making yourself feel better is a useless waste of time, space, and energy. Saying, damn, this doesn't work, we need to do something about it, is the very foundation of what we consider the basic call of humanity.
No.
It's the premise that, the United States is based on. It's the premise that the Good Samaritan story tries to institute in others or influence in others. And if we cannot even provide that basic support to the people in need, to the people that are just looking for their voices to be heard, then we are doing ourselves as much a disservice as we are them.
That very well said.
So where do we go from here? We're both parents. We have our little girls, which terrifies me more and more as I hear what women go through and see firsthand what they go through. Where do we go from here as we raise our kids in today's society? What can we do to give them a better chance and their friends and their communities?
That's such a tough question to ask, and yeah, especially having daughters. If I had a son, I could just not teach him to be a masculine prick and do my part. So I can hope that my friends that are having sons or have had sons that are going to be influencing the following generations, they've instilled them with better values and more tolerance and a fucking brain. Not a meat sack that says punch things to get ahead.
Let's look at some of the good that has come out of the last couple of weeks. We've talked about the Supreme Court cases. Right now, the Guardian Con Convention, or the Gaming
Community Expo,
was doing their virtual fundraiser and has reached $5 million for St. Jude for Gaming for Good. It's this same group that has also had the back of many of those female streamers that came out about the sexual harassment situations.
Mm-hmm.
It is a foundation of people standing up and putting their money where their mouth is and fighting for a better cause, not because someone told them to, but because they said this is the right thing and they're standing up. We're seeing a lot of companies, some that are doing lip service, but others like Bungie, who are putting their money where their mouth is and are unafraid to lose people if it means following ideals that are important to them. I don't know if I remember reading correctly, some of the Bungie senior staff got arrested because they were at protests.
Arrested, tear gassed, beanbagged.
We have our doctors and nurses, which are still putting themselves at risk to fight a pandemic that not all of society, a very small but determined portion of society, has decided that they're bored with and want to move on from. We have teachers that continue to figure out ways to teach kids that no longer have access to the stable situation that has been present for the last 100 plus years of society. And we have people willing to take a stand. And just as, the last couple weeks have seen several deaths as the result of police brutality or white supremacy disguised as suicide or other things that are happening, we are seeing others step up. One of the current VP candidates for the Democratic Party publicly announced that she was pulling out of the race because it's not her voice that needed to be heard at this time.
Right.
And that is a very powerful statement. And, sounding board that would not have existed 10 years ago. And so I see hope. I see change possible. But I see it every step of the way being a fight. It's a struggle uphill. And it'll always be a struggle uphill until there's no other way. The sins have been erased and forgotten. And this is just always the way it's been. And that is something that'll be far longer than any of the lifetimes of anyone who is now listening to this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've seen changes in my lifetime that have been, positive. Again, we have women senators, women representatives, and people of color and representation that did not exist when I grew up.
Yeah.
So there is progress being made, and I think we're getting to that point where those minorities in position of power are actually respected for it, as opposed to just seen as, okay, well, we made an exception just to tick a box.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what feels different about this time around. Everyone says, well, it's just going to be forgotten in a few months, and it always seems to follow that path. We'll see.
Well,
when we get to episode 26, this may be, we may have to keep reminding him. And hopefully we don't.
We have the privilege, because of our skin color, because of our gender, that we can take a step back and look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something everyone can do. I'm not going to be someone who stands there and protests on the street, but I am someone that's making sure that people are getting the resources they need.
Mm-hmm.
I've been teaming up with people on the ground in Minneapolis to make sure that basic goods and groceries and things like that are making it to those communities so they can continue to survive, because otherwise they're destitute. I've got several people that are acting as first responders and emergency medical support that are also getting attacked during these protests. We're making sure that they're connected and have resources in order to take care of people. Not everyone is the frontline tank. Not everyone is the person who can handle all the aggro. But
right.
How you fight is a lot more versatile than people realize. Standing in a Senate chamber and doing your speech is just as much of a platform as a major streamer these days or influencer getting online and talking about it. Hell, we see it right now. Ron Perlman, actor who plays Hellboy amongst other things, is been in a three-way fight with three Republican senators. And it's like the stupidest thing ever, because they're trying to antagonize him, and they've got no platform to stand on. And he's sitting there, I'll put my money where my mouth is. Where do you want to go?
You're trying to piss off Hellboy.
That kind of stupid bullshit that constantly goes on. Use your platform to stand up for what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Help the people that need it the most. We've got Guardian's mental health group. If you need a break, if you know someone who needs support, send them there. It's just as influential as being another body in the street.
Yeah. That's something we've been working on, is getting the resources, like new resources that are appropriate for this era.
Mm-hmm. And this era changes. We've seen more change in the last 20 years than we've seen in the last 5 decades. And that needs to be something that is very clearly understood. a lot of what we're fighting is people that we're used to change taking 30, 40 years to happen. We're now talking systemic, massive change in how society perceives things in less than a single generation.
Well,
Millennials and Generation
welcome
Z.
to the internet era.
Yeah.
Where you can't get away with anything anymore. If you're a shithead, it's going to be put on YouTube within 20 minutes. You can't rely
listening to
on
parents growing up.
Yeah, you can't rely on media anymore.
On the internet. Be careful what you put on the internet.
Yeah.
And suddenly you got your parents posting racist things on there.
Right.
Not knowing what they're talking about. But
yeah.
Don't give up. That's my thought. Don't give up. Keep fighting whatever way that is right for you. Standing on the battlefield isn't always the only option. But yelling from a crowd and drowned out by the noise is useless. One person standing up to help another is the very basic foundation of it. We've seen people put their own life and limb at danger to help people that they would consider their enemy in the traditional sense. There's several examples from the current protests where someone came in to antagonize or cause problems at the protest, and the protesters themselves stopped that individual, or if that individual had gotten hurt, they stepped in to make sure that individual was not harmed or had proper medical attention or things like that. Yeah. The golden rule applies, and it doesn't just apply when it's convenient to you.
Yeah, for every misaction, you can see a positive reaction from both sides of the fight. Yeah, there's allies in every sector of this. It's just what we choose to put out there.
So,
yeah.
On that note, I think we're about ready to wrap up here.
Are you tired?
No, but I think we've got our point across.
Yeah.
This has been a lot more philosophical and deep and meaningful conversation than the last couple podcast episodes have been. But I think that's what makes this important, is we are using our platform. We are using what little reach we have to try and make a difference.
And honestly, I'm going to go back and edit this, and I'm going to shake my head, and we didn't do enough.
No. There's never enough we can do.
Right.
There's never enough anyone that is in a fight like this can do. We have to remember, we're kind of passive. We're standby in a lot of this.
But we don't have to be.
That's our blessing with our skin color and our gender. But for the sake of who we want ourselves to be, what we want to leave to those important to us, it is a fight that we have to be. So it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. We need to be better friends, better supporters, better allies, better advocates.
Yep. And this doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. This doesn't end when you log off for the night. So every day, wake up and say, I'm not going to be a shitty person. Let's start there.
Today I'm going to do better.
Yeah. Today I'm going to be a decent human being.
So with that.
So what do you think of our remote format here? You like it better than getting chewed up by bugs in my backyard?
Well, I think it's a nice change. We can kind of isolate this, and I think it gives us more flexibility. But at the same time, this format, I think, provides it a lot easier for us to have other people on.
Oh no, this will be a technical nightmare if we have a third camera window here. What a fucking pain in the ass. And we'll have to find a different way of doing this, either Zoom or Google Talk or Teams, or I don't know. We'll figure something out. Yeah, Discord will not be the way we do this.
Yeah. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But we should definitely be getting other voices into these conversations.
Let's let me get some sleep. That'll
I
be
forgot you're the
this.
podcast king
Thank
of...
God this week is the last week I have to start work at 4 a.m.
Oh, so Monday you start...
Monday it's back to 5 a.m. That's not a whole lot better, but it's better than waking up at 3.
4 a.m.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean,
Especially with
you've
your
seen
girls
me.
not sleeping.
I can't come over without falling asleep on your damn couch.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm wiped out constantly. So hopefully business picks back up and
I can get a job.
you can get a job. Yeah, I can keep a job. We don't have to do any more cuts.
Yeah. No, I'll start going into my whole financial independence rant shortly. If we keep that conversation up. Because, let's be real, Drew.
Oh, God damn it, Ian.
You know, as a W-2 employee, you're always subject to someone else's whim. And the more debt you have, the more obligations you have that you can't support yourself, the less likely you are to be able to actually retire or take the time to be with the family. You're always at someone else's whim. Which is where I'm trying to get out of right now. Just pay off all the debt. So that
Same.
if something happens, we've got enough put away that we can try our own thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I've been risk averse for a long time, and that's not without reason. It's just my history was checkered with absentee parentism. You know, in the name of survival, in prosperity. So there's a fine line.
Always is.
I don't want to work my ass off and never see my family.
Yep. Well, I'm the same way. Turned down a couple quite lucrative opportunities because I want to actually watch my kids grow up.
Right.
Well, on that note, Happy Father's Day.
Happy first Father's Day.
We'll see you tomorrow.
But I'll see you tomorrow. We won't see them. These people over here that are staring at their phones.
Maybe it'll be. Maybe we'll do a surprise stream.
Oh God.
I'm gonna turn off recording right now.
All right. Well, hold on. You want to shout out your socials? Fuck's sake. How long you been doing this?
Not long enough, apparently. I'm on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at ChewData2020.
You can find me on Twitch and Mixer, streaming, at NateFoo. You can find me at Twitter at GGNateFoo, N8FOO.
If you talk to Nate Foo on Twitter, it's someone else. But he's a nice guy.
Oh, old Mr. Hubbard. Yeah, I love that guy. Good peeps. He got a good chuckle out of our episode where we mentioned the mistagging with Dan Finity and Nate Foo, and what did you do when you posted the episode up? You mistagged us.
Yep. Well, gotta keep it consistent, right?
Okay. Everyone, have a good night.
No.
We'll be back at this in a couple of weeks.
Feel free to reach out to us with any ideas, any thoughts, or if you'd like to come on and shoot the shit with us.
Yeah, I know we actually have a couple of people interested in coming on, so maybe I'll reach out to them and get them lined up.
That'd be great. Until then, keep drinking.
All right. Have a good night. Cheers.